COVID, and then about 5% of the Mary Greeley staff are out.
Welcome to
because of
the
COVID.
January 10th,
Thank you.
2022 meeting of the Rotary Club of Ames. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. Standing. I am not aware of anyone kept in our thoughts and hearts and good vibes. Is there anyone that has someone in mind that we should be keeping on our hearts? If not, let's just go ahead and take a moment of silence. Thank you. You can be seated. I'm going to call Park out. Park, did we have any visiting Rotarians or visitors besides our speakers? Oh, Steve will be up here in just a moment, so he can take the stage.
Are you welcome?
And I totally forgot that your dad came by. I'll let
You know
you.
what? Actually, I have a special song for the speakers and the welcome song. Which would you like first? Well, we'll go with the welcome song first. Welcome to you from Ames Rotary, Nevada, London, or Gay Paris, from far off lands or the USA. We're glad that you are here
And
today.
I think Louis from his own seat in his office back home will be leading us in a song or two.
Okay, if you're ready, we'll do the welcome song. Welcome to you from Ames Rotary, Nevada, London, or Gay Paris, from far off lands or the USA. We're glad that you are here today. Come back again whenever you're near. Join us and then we'll make it clear. Around the world you will always be welcome at Rotary. And I do have a special song for the speakers too. Here we go. This was actually written by Charles Connector a few years ago, and I've modified just one word in there, and you might guess which word that is. And we go with school days, tell us, Paula, your gaze, buildings and budgets and naughty books. What do you see that gets second looks? You are our soup in Iowa, Ames. Let's hear your plans and games. Please write on our slate. You are the best, students, teachers above the rest.
Some January birthdays. Happy birthday to that fine list of Rotarians. And oh yeah, no, nobody got married in January. That's okay. And some member anniversaries. Do we feel like we should sing to them or do we want to skip that? Sing. All right, Louis, crank it back up or keep going.
Okay, sure. We'll go to happy birthdays then.
Yeah.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Rotarians. Happy birthday to you.
Woo. Thank you, Louis. Now, well, happy anniversary. So that'll be it for that. Let's go ahead and have past district governor Steve Dakin come on up. He has an announcement or maybe some info.
Thanks for this opportunity. As always, I enjoy talking to Rotarians. As you know, hopefully you know that last week, District Governor Olka, District Governor nominee, Dennis Drager, Al Hermanson, and Jacqueline Duke and myself went to Kentucky and worked in Gilbertsville, just north of Mayfield. quite an adventure. Today, I've sent out an email, and you'll be seeing that. There's one really great story in there. So please read it. We're going to, with District Governor-elect Steve Winnicky, next Monday. We're heading up another group to go down. So if anybody's available, please sign on. We'll be coming back Thursday or Friday. It's Go Serve Global that we're teamed up with. Go Serve Global is the ones that do the Sukaptepi homes around the world, but they all have what they call a domestic. And so they work in Iowa and they work in the Midwest. And they usually go to a town that doesn't get much publicity. Like Mayfield probably got lots of action, lots of publicity. So they pick out an area that doesn't get much, and they picked out Gilbertsville. And like I said, you want to make some friends, you want to do some good, please come join with us, and thank you.
At this time, I will ask Kent to come on up to introduce our speakers.
Thank you, President Kelsey. And just another example that Steve was sharing is service above self. So if anybody can make themselves available, that would just be an incredible opportunity. Now, I have the opportunity to enlighten you with the introduction of three very special guests. And I know that you don't have any questions for them, so I'm going to just take all their time right now. First, we have Dr. Paula Vincent. Dr. Paula Vincent's the interim superintendent of the Ames Public School through this year. She's highly regarded public school administrator with over 30 years of educational leadership experience. Prior to coming to Ames to help us, she served as the chief administrator at Heartland AEA and has held other superintendent positions across Iowa. With her is Dr. Jeff Hawkins. He's the superintendent of Ames School, and he's been in that position here in Ames since 2019. He's an educational leader, has experience with building staff commitment to achieve a district's mission and vision, curriculum implementation. I need to go back to school. He leverages his professional learning communities to improve instruction and assessment practices and building the capacity in staff to improve student learning. And the individual that I was coordinating with this is the Director of Communications, Eric Smith. So we want to thank each of you for being here. Eric has been in this position since 2017. Under his leadership, Ames School has completely revamped their communication and brand strategy and now includes a greater social media presence, a quarterly amazing magazine, which you get in your mail and you will see on your tables. It's a great read. And he's also does a district podcast. He's been a resident of Ames for 18 years, and he earned his master's degree from Iowa State University. Now, I'm not sure which of the three will come and speak with us first, so Paul, it will be you. We look forward to hearing. Thank you.
Well, good afternoon. It's great to be among a group of Rotarians again. I must say it brought back some nice memories of the time I spent with the Cedar Rapids Club for about a decade. And it's interesting to see how similar some of the opening procedures are. You sing a little better, I'll just say, you know, but anyway. We're going to do kind of a tag team today. It's our intent to be very informal. We will certainly allow time for questions at the end, but at any time, we're a small enough group. Feel free to interrupt us if you have a question that we can clarify about the topic that we're talking about. We are trying to be active within the community, providing an opportunity to exchange information with many groups. And so we especially appreciate the opportunity to be here with you. As you might know, our district is one of the largest in the state. And with that comes some of the opportunities and some of the challenges of really a more metro type school district. It's been interesting for me, having served in many districts, to see the similarities and the differences. But one of the greatest things that I'm finding about Ames is just the fact that we happen to live and work together with a major research university right here. What a wonderful asset that is to all of us and the diversity it brings into our schools. You'll see on the slides going through here some of our facts and things. I'm going to just make a few comments and then turn it over to Eric to get into some of the detail. We definitely are a major employer, almost 700 employees, our budget about 128 million. So we get to have the joys, if you will, and the challenges that all of you probably have right now with trying to recruit and retain a workforce to meet our needs. We, at any given time this year, have had vacancies. We also obviously have many aspects of any typical business. You know, we have a human resource department, we have obviously all the finances, all the communications, and then we have that thing that we really try to concentrate on, which is, of course, teaching and learning. And teaching and learning not only for students, but for all of our adults too, because it's in those partnerships with our staff and with families that we can reach those goals we have for our students. We're going to dig into a little bit more our enrollment. That seems to have been one of those areas that it gets challenging sometimes to communicate. You know, I remember at one point in another district, someone saying, how come the numbers never match up when you talk about how many students you have? You would think that's a very basic math problem, wouldn't you? I mean, there's just one number, but I'm going to let our Director of Communications, Eric, dig into that a little bit more with you about it depends on how the question's asked, what answer you will get when someone says, how many students do you have? But for practical purposes, we consider ourselves a district of about 5,000 students with some caveats that you'll hear about.
Thanks, Paula. I want to start again by thanks Kent for the invitation and work the logistics to make this happen. I felt like several years ago when we were going through a bond referendum, we really made concerted efforts to get out into the community and talk about the school district. I think we took a little bit of a pause, to take a breather after that. And then the pandemic, hit all of us. That kind of put a pause to all of this. Like, we clearly know we're not past that yet, but this is part of that concerted effort to get more out into our community, just to talk about our district. It's not lost on us that because we work with students, we do make the news from time to time. And so we want to answer all of those questions. So we're going to go through some points. It was mentioned on your table. A lot of the initial information that we're going to go through here, we have in a one sheet. You're welcome to take that with you. Any of our magazines, you're welcome to take with you as well. And we have more of those. But to get to enrollment, yeah, it's not as easy as what it should be. And so we kind of look at two different numbers. The first here is our certified enrollment. And so across the state on October 1, where students are at, what district they are in, those count towards that district's certified enrollment. So every district across the state, they submit those numbers to the Department of Education. And this number right here, we use a lot for our budgeting purposes. It's a weighted formula, but it doesn't necessarily count all of our students in the same way. But you can see the trend going back several decades on what certified enrollment looked like in our district. On the next slide, this includes a few other students. For example, our preschool students are not included in our certified enrollment, and this also includes students as a part of our homeschool assistance program. And so when we look at this number, these are the number of students who are actually serving in our district. And so although this number doesn't necessarily reflect what we need for budget purposes, it does as far as our building capacity. And so we do look at both numbers. In the introduction, and this isn't lost on me, I did say that I was a resident and have been of our community for 18 years. And I'm in my 5th year right now working in this capacity. And I was always under the impression prior to coming here, there were some questions around what open enrollment looked like in our community. And it was my impression that, we have students in our Ames district that would leave our district. And then I get to this position and I found the exact opposite to be true. And so I always do like to include this slide when we're talking as part of these community presentations to show what our open enrollment does look like. So this is from the past several years, almost a decade. And you can see that the number of students who live outside of the Ames district, 404, are choosing to open enroll into the Ames district. And then the other number with the black trend line, 233 students, those are students who live within the Ames district and open enroll out. Because the Gilbert School District, that line is, really right in North Ames. It's, you can live on one side of the road and you can be in the Gilbert district and live on the other side of the road and be in the Ames district. That's where we see the majority of those exchanges, but I think it's an important slide to include. And then one other slide here shows our student demographics. And again, if you want to take the one sheets home, we kind of have packaged a lot of this initial general information into that one sheet. And it just kind of offers some baseline perspective on what our district looks like.
Good afternoon, Rotarians. As introduced, my name is Jeff Hawkins. I'm very proud to be the Assistant Superintendent of a great district like Ames. Appreciate the opportunity to be with you here today and share some information and maybe answer a few questions. I know one of the questions that's big for our community right now is the need to find a new permanent superintendent. So take just a moment this morning and talk with you, or this afternoon, talk with you about that process. So earlier in the fall, our community, both through a survey and through focus group processes, had the opportunity to tell our school board what exactly are we looking for in our next superintendent. All of that information was compiled into a leadership profile report that was presented to the board and to the district. I believe that portions of that leadership profile are available on our website now. And then the board and our search firm has used that leadership profile to recruit and screen a variety of candidates that they believe meet the characteristics and traits that our community and our staff have told us that they're looking for, and our students. I believe a little over 1,240 people participated in that initial feedback process to help generate that report. And then based upon the recommendation of our search firm, moving forward, the process is a confidential process. So excitedly, on Friday and Saturday of this past week, the board began screening interviews with 6 candidates who met that leadership profile to the best of the ability to align with that as per our search firm. Our board is going to go into closed session this week, I believe actually tonight, and identify 3 finalist candidates that will then be interviewed later on next week. And then towards the end of this month, we'll have a public announcement about that new permanent superintendent. So I'm sure I know I personally am really excited to see which candidate is chosen as the best next place for us to lead. And again, I am excited that can be grounded upon a pretty broad basis of feedback as to what we're looking for. Oh, do I? I don't think so. It's all right.
So if you've had an opportunity to keep track of or even recently drive past our new high school construction project, it is absolutely a wonder to look at. It is a point of pride not only for our school district, but it should be a point of pride for our community as well, because when it's done, and it will be done, in short order at this point, it's absolutely magnificent. So a quick recap on that process. In 2018, our community voted on and approved with an 85% approval, a bond referendum for $110 million. Now, as a communications professional and one that pays attention to what happens in other school districts, I have yet to see an 85% approval rating. In fact, I've seen other districts, actually similar size to Ames, go through 3 different bond referendums before they hit the 60% threshold to build a new high school. And so that was really exciting for us as a community back in 2018. And, we did a lot of work as far as sharing what that would look like for our community. And then we had that lull period where, we actually have to build the school building. And so that's what's been happening for the past several years. At this point, we do anticipate that the building will be substantially complete yet this spring, and we're going to take the summer and move, the items over and get it prepared for next school year, August of 2022, when our students will be walking the halls. So it'd been a while since I had been in the construction site, and so I invited myself to a tour with our high school building administrative team back in November. And of course, when I go, I'm looking to take a bunch of pictures and shoot video that we can share with our community, because I do understand it is a construction site. I've been reminded of that many times by our director of facilities, and it's not something that people can just wander about at will. And so I put together a video that's on our YouTube channel. We shared it through social media, and it looks absolutely amazing so far. It'd been nearly a year since I'd been in it. But one of the funny things that I reflected on later was when I invited myself to go with our high school building administrators. I go in and I'm all wide-eyed about it, and going with them, it was fascinating. They quickly got past that and started working on the nuts and bolts and logistics of how they are actually going to operate that school next year. So it was pretty insightful being able to walk through with them. But a couple pictures on here that I wanted to share. In the upper left-hand corner, that will be the main entrance into our building. And having been part of conversations as far as when this building was being planned and laid out, I'm really impressed with the thought that went into it. So this main entrance will also double as a commons, but also a great community area for our community. So when you walk in, right to the left is where our competition gymnasium will be. And at that time, it's in our lower left corner here. That's what it looks like. If you go off into the right, that's where our auditorium will be. So there'll be this great, common space that, people can just kind of hang out and they can go to the basketball game, but it'll just be a great community event. And then off of that, we have an activities wing and an academic wing. And so one of the first pieces that was begun on the project, and so the first that is now, wrapping up are these academic pods. So over on the lower right-hand corner, we have a number of these academic pods where there's a center collaboration space, and then it's surrounded by a bunch of classrooms. And we have a number of those, and that's what, the majority of our classrooms will look like in the new building.
All righty, well, I get to continue to share some points of pride and some great things going on in our school district. So recently, the Iowa School Performance Profiles were released. Those are essentially the report card, if you will, for our district and for our buildings, released by the Department of Education. You can see here on this slide, it shows you some of the data from the Iowa assessments that have been recently taken. You can see there that there's some things for us to be excited about, and there's also some areas where we want to leverage improvement. Excitedly, I can tell you, though, that as we looked at our Iowa School Performance Profile as a district, we were either at or above the state average in many areas, including graduation rate, percent proficient in math and reading, post-secondary readiness, based upon people's readiness for college level coursework. All of our buildings saw an improvement or an increase to their score from the previous year. 2 of our schools were rated as high performing, 3 schools as commendable, and 3 schools as acceptable. And so while there certainly is some room for growth for our system on this assessment and on these report cards, we're seeing things move in the direction that we want, which is good. Another point of pride for us is recently, last year, our high school, Ames High School, was identified in U.S. News and World Report as one of the top high schools in the state of Iowa. I believe last year we were 5. The year previously, we were number 1 and are working to get back to number 1, right? That's where we all want to be. But it's a great point of pride to be a top high school in the state of Iowa, and something that we should all feel good about. And then lastly, want to talk a little bit about fine arts, some more academics and some sports, right? Last year's graduating class was over 300 students. That's a graduation rate just above 98%, which is fantastic, way above the state average. And something that we should, that graduation rate's been very high that I've seen for our system over the years, and something we'll work to maintain. Over the last 3 years, we've had 32 national merit semifinalists, 14 of them last year, which kind of blows other districts out of the water, to be quite honest with you, something that we should be very proud of. Our regional science bowl were named champions and were again qualified for a spot in the National Science Bowl event. As you hopefully well know, we have a wonderful fine arts program. Last year, we had 27 Ames High musicians that were selected to the 2021 Iowa State Music Festival. We had 32 the previous year. Again, super high numbers. We had an artist from Ames High selected as the 2021 National Art Honor Society as a member of that. And again, we have 92 team state champions, the most of any district in the state. We have the 2021 girls swimming were runner-up. That's the 12th consecutive year that they were either the state champion or the runner-up. 2020, we had our boys basketball team go to state. And in 2021, our girls cross country placed third in state. And I won't miss the opportunity to thank Judge and the work that he's done in preparing all that success in all those various ways. So lots and lots of things to be proud of in our schools. And there are a few things, as Paula said earlier, that we see ourselves in the paper and some challenges. And luckily, Paula drew the short straw to get to talk about that.
As you hear all these accolades and wonderful things about our district, we know that doesn't happen without the involvement of a community and with families and the hard work of the students themselves. So how privileged we are to be here in Ames, a community that has demonstrated time and time again, and certainly I've felt in my short time here, that level of support for students. It's our goal every day that every student is learning and every student is thriving. And one of the challenges, as you're aware probably, this fall has been helping students remember what it means to go to school. We've had to be pretty active in reteaching how we behave together, how we are civil to each other, how we take care of our buildings. It really had the disruption with the pandemic really highlighted that is just not normal for some members of our community. And we even have seen this with our very young children, that coming back to school and being side by side with peers all day, we have to work at those social sorts of skills and be actively teaching that right along with our academics. I would say to you, we feel like we have made great progress and being able to have sustained school for several months now. I think that is probably something that while we always will be teaching and having those expectations, I'm not sure we'll see the level of challenge that we saw this fall. I hope not, because it really gave us a run for our money. The most pressing issue we have right now, we share, I would guess, with most of you, and that is access to the talent that we need to staff our schools fully. As recently as a couple of weeks ago, among the 18 largest school districts in the state, we had 400 vacancies among us. We're fortunate here in Ames that our percentage of vacancy isn't quite that high, but we still today, in case you were looking for that extra gig, we probably have upwards of 30 positions that we would like to fill tonight. You know, it's not going to happen, but that is an ongoing challenge that we think we will probably face into next year. We're trying really hard to be very proactive, getting our vacancies known early, using all kinds of recruitment and retention tools that I'm sure you are. But that has challenged our ability to help meet that wide array of student needs that we currently have. So with that, I would just leave this conversation with these thoughts before we open it for any questions that you might have. Is the observation I would share with you is that Ames is a wonderful community to live and work in. Our schools have amazing, dedicated people working within it. And it's only in that strategy that we can get the results that you saw that Dr. Hawkins highlighted. So what a privilege to have that kind of capacity here. And yet we ask for your continued support in any way that you can because of the challenges that are going to continue to be there in a diverse school district like ours. those we are just going to live with. But if Ames can't do it, who can, right? What a great set of resources that are there to help us. So with that, what have we left untouched, or what questions would you like to ask us?
I believe Iowa State, if they have a need which is not met by existing faculty members, can allow an adjunct faculty position. Given that, is there any similar allowance to reduce requirements for your teaching staff, for someone in the community who has a specialty, et cetera, that you might be able to use to do so without as many of the hurdles that they would have normally met?
And I believe you all can hear the question, but our governor has tried to allow us some flexibility. Some of that kind of comes and goes with some windows to it. But we have substitute positions, and some of those rules have allowed us a little increased flexibility. We think we probably could work with some requested waivers, et cetera, in many circumstances. So if you know of someone that might be thinking about it or wondering, I would ask that you just contact us through our HR department, and we would certainly do what we could to try to work through that. So there are probably positions that we could craft that would keep us within the requirements of the law and also have some increased flexibility. So thank you for that.
Just more of a comment than a question. First of all, thanks for being here. Recently, I had an opportunity through Story Construction and the Ames Chamber to go through the school. And for those of you that haven't, I would just have to say, thank you for what you're building. It is unbelievable. And I cannot imagine anybody in the country has as nice a facility as we're going to have. So thank you.
Well, that one, actually, you all should thank yourselves, right? That was a vision from leadership a few years ago, and obviously the community had to vote to allow that to happen. But I concur with you. That facility is going to rival many of our smaller colleges and universities, let alone high schools, and what a beautiful community resource.
Going back to what you said a moment ago, you mentioned a figure of 400 and some. Tell me what that is again. We're 400, not 400 teachers short. What is?
Oh, the staffing thing. Across the larger school districts in the state of Iowa right now, they have a combination of teaching positions, educational assistants, bus drivers, custodians. That was everybody linked together. It wasn't just teaching positions.
Thank you.
Yeah, that are vacant. I would just add to that, recently, some data came out that showed that over the last decade, for example, our neighbor in Illinois has lost 50% of its applicants into the teaching profession. In Iowa, we've dwindled close to 30%. I only raise Illinois because that's obviously one of our competitors for employees, but that shrinking labor force just adds to the complications that we've all experienced here with the pandemic.
Eric, and I can help on the back end of this question, but probably there's concern, or what's the plan out there with the history and the transition of moving the current high school to the new high school? And I'll help with that. But what's the vision that we've worked on? Jeff also.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So excitedly, we've been very thoughtful and planful about moving that history, the memorabilia, the plaques, the trophies, the honors, the awards. Actually going to our board tonight for approval is the approval of a person, a position, if you will, that will assist and aid in that transition. Very excited the judge has agreed to do that with the district. It was a nice softball. I appreciate it, man. So we have a position that will be working to establish a committee, community stakeholders, alumni, and judge. Actually, you probably are in a better position to answer exactly who's going to be in that. But the goal will be to make sure that whether that's the the list of names of those national merit scholars that are right there as you walk outside of the cafeteria, or whether it's that beautiful activities and athletics display right outside the gymnasium, or all those other things that just make us so proud of that rich tradition at Ames High. This position will essentially be working to make sure that we're thoughtful about what gets transitioned to the new building. How does that get displayed? What happens with those things that don't get transitioned to the building? And how do we get those things back to, maybe it's I'm just going to make up something. Maybe it's the 1971 fourth place track meet trophy. I don't know if the committee will decide that fourth place trophies get moved over. Maybe they do, maybe they don't, I don't know. But if they don't, how do we try to get a hold of somebody from that 1971 state track team? See if maybe they would want that trophy, right? And so there's just, I'm excited about Judge's work and leadership that will evidence that. And I'm excited about being really planful about how we take that history and make sure that that's not lost in the transition to a new building. Is that what you were asking about?
Yeah, Jeff, and I
Okay.
just wanted to, you've been through this. Jeff was at the Ankeny School District previous to a stop here. So he's been through a major high school building transition down there. And, there's been a lot of questions in my 19 years as athletic director with our alumni. What are we going to do with those trophies and those plaques and those banners and things like that? We're simply not going to roll up a dumpster and just throw a bunch of stuff away. So we're going to have to be mindful and very transparent and have a plan of what makes the move and what makes the move into the digital age that Eric Schmidt can help us with too. And digital kiosks and things like that. So a lot of work to be done. So thanks for getting the message out and letting the community know that we're mindful of that. So thank you.
Well, I think most of us are aware that there's been continued controversy about what you can teach or what books you can have. So do you want to give us an update of where we're currently at with the Ames School District? What particular issues and hopeful remedies we can have?
Sure. Yep, happy to. Well, as I start, I would say certainly want to thank Senator Kornbach for the work that he did with his colleagues to try to write into House File 802 the flexibility that is there, right? So it's not exactly, the high school version of that is not exactly the same thing as the college and university version of that. But I would be remiss if I didn't say that House File 802 has had a bit of an effect upon the way we approach both staff training and some of the conversations that are happening in our classroom, and I won't pull that punch. And so we are continuing to offer staff training, but some of those trainings are voluntary now as opposed to being required. We're continuing to have conversations in classrooms, but I could say particularly like our social justice and activism literature class that occurs at our high school, they work really closely with our director of curriculum and our director of equity to make sure that as we're there reading and having conversations, that we're mindful of that law and how we comply with that. Of course, the work that I mentioned earlier that was done allows us to respond to questions from students. And sometimes, so those conversations might occur, but those aren't conversations if they're around divisive concepts are not generated by the school, right? And so I apologize. There was another aspect of your question that I was thinking about. The books, yes. I do happen to be able to chair our Reconsideration Committee. We have not had a formal request yet or an informal request to reconsider a text from our library, as I know a number of our neighboring districts are experiencing currently. But we're certainly positioned and prepared and have a process that's governed by board policy to make sure that if there is a request to consider a book as not appropriate for our system, there's a whole process outlined in board policy to do that. And again, we have not had that as of today. I don't know do you feel like I answered your question? Okay, sir. Very good.
There's a question in the chat. I'm going to go ahead and just read it for everyone. Please address the wider curriculum issue of the policy and practices of teaching history topics such as slavery.
Well, again, I think it gets back to the same gist of the question the gentleman asked just a moment ago. We can teach about slavery. We can teach about things that happened in our history. House File 802 would indicate that what we cannot teach is that Iowa is systemically racist, that the United States is systemically racist. We cannot intentionally try to communicate to someone that they should feel guilty or bad based upon their race as to what happened in history. And we should not teach that there's implicit bias. Those four concepts don't make up the construction of every really productive conversation that we could have in a high school, right? And so there's still a lot of really good history or pieces of literature that we can read and have rich conversations that align to the purposes of our school, which is about promoting an equitable environment that helps maintain and improve education for all of our kids. So I wouldn't want to leave you as an audience with, oh, darn, there's really nothing we can talk about anymore when it comes to equity. That's not the case. But those four concepts are ones that we need to be thoughtful about and careful about so that we're not breaking that law. I hope that answered the person's question.
I had a question just kind of, regards to what you were mentioning earlier about, needing to teach students like how to go to school together again. And, we heard, in this past fall that there were fights broken out, quite frequently at the schools. So I am curious as to if there are resources in place for students, in situations like this, like if there's plans to prevent or how you plan to address if there are continued tensions in school, or if you've seen a decrease in that towards the end of the semester, and just a plan or update on what the school's plan is in case those fights do happen to continue to break out, or just an update on that.
Sorry that you keep getting to hear me. Well, yes, actually, because of what you addressed, because of the situation at hand, there were a number of things that were done in response to that. I'm excited to be able to report to you that that's working exactly how we would intend, and I'll get to the data piece of that in just a moment. But as a result of some of the behaviors that we're seeing, particularly at the high school, there were some personnel things that happened, right? So we did see a change in leadership, right? That was probably something that many of us in the room heard about. We also added some campus monitors, and we got an additional interim assistant principal, just to have the staffing that we felt was needed in order to make sure that we could move towards some of the new procedures that were also being implemented. And so there were new procedures for lunchroom supervision, for hallway supervision. There were new processes that we taught students around attendance expectations. We actually even moved the location of where study hall happens within the building in order to be just a little bit more strategic and less opportunity to roam around the halls. And then finally, we had some programming changes. So you'll see the alliteration there, some personnel, some procedures, and some programming changes. But there's an old English teacher in me. I just can't give it up, I guess. But one of the things that a lot of large schools in the state of Iowa would have would be some version of alternative programming for students, because whether it's because of behavior violations or attendance situations, or sometimes there's a wide variety of reasons why a comprehensive high school setting just doesn't work for every child. And so we're looking at finding ways to provide a rich quality experience that may not include walking through the doors from 8 o'clock until 3 o'clock every day, right? So some programming changes as well. Excitedly, I could tell you, I think the last time I looked up the data was not quite a week ago. We haven't had a fight, knock on wood, in weeks. I believe our incidents of fights are down over 50%. Our incidents of vandalisms are down over 40%. And unfortunately, we just cannot get to the place where I'm ready to yet say that our attendance is up. Our attendance is still not where we would want it to be, but we're working on that as well.
On an earlier slide on your questions, you had social media listed. So I'm wondering how you feel about TikTok.
That's a good question.
Not great. about it. We're going to cut to the chase. What we've come to, I think we're now to a point where we've come to realize that, we have a new reality. And again, this is my 5th year in the district. And from when I started to where we are today, the landscape has changed a lot. And it's not just TikTok. I think it's social media as a whole. We have a responsibility as a school district to be able to report out accurate information. We don't have the luxury where we can tell our parents or our community all of the details about, what may have happened. Take a student fight, for example. We can't disclose some of that information. And when I put my parent hat on, I am a parent, that can be frustrating because you hear things, these are our kids, these are our students that, fights, for example, or there's other, rumors just in the past month or so, there was a supposed threat, an act of violence that was going to take place at our, one of our schools. And we have a responsibility to get accurate information, and we have a responsibility then to investigate that information and then act upon it. And in both of those situations, the rumors spread a lot more quickly than what we can control in any way. And the reality was that the threats and the rumors that were spreading across our community were not even a fraction close. But the feelings, and when I put my parent hat on, those feelings, if I were to receive a text message, from my students, luckily I have some younger kids who don't have phones or social media yet, but I can empathize with this feeling is, that is concerning. You see the news across our country around school shootings, and I get that. We also cannot have a practice where we shut down a school because of, what 2 13-year-old students, told us on that moment. We do have a responsibility where, we have to investigate it, and we absolutely do very quickly. And so it's a challenge that we're going to continue to face moving forward. One of the things that's on our very short to-do list is to revisit our crisis communication plans to determine what we communicate, when we communicate it. And, that is feedback that we have received. And I think it's very valid feedback that we've received from members of our community and parents. And so that is something that we are currently undertaking.
I could just add really quickly one thing to that. I know that, so Dr. Vincent and I got to meet with Steve Shanker and our chief of police within the last week to have conversations about how do we improve accurate, timely communication? What are those emergency procedures and protocols? And I know that if those partners were standing on the stage with us today, they would want you to know we left that conversation feeling really good about the increased level of collaboration that we were going to have, and that they did advise, please get us involved right away. We want to help you in the investigation process. We have tools and resources that you may not have access to more quickly ferret through that investigation process. And they also did encourage, don't evacuate and close buildings unless you have a legitimate threat to safety going on. But would want you as our public to know that there's a high level of collaboration with our local police on that topic as well.
I have a couple more.
Can I add one more thing about social media?
Yeah.
This is an interesting topic, so much so that when we talk about communication channels, if you are a podcast listener, I would encourage you to take a look at our district podcast. Just recently, I had a professor on from Drake University, and we did 2 episodes on social media. And I don't really feel as though like I'm generationally removed from social media. And then after that conversation, I realized that I very much am. And I think, it's important to also understand, and this is a growth area that we need to have individually, but also as a district, how our students interact on social media. The professor, he came on and told me that, students these days, they are constantly on social media all the time. They live on that. And there are stressors that can be associated with that. And one of the things that he told me, if there's like a social gathering and there are, 2 teenagers or maybe even beyond that, they may not know each other. I'm very used to, let's exchange, email addresses, let's exchange, phone numbers. they exchange, TikTok accounts, and that's how they interact with one another. And, there is something that, happens when your focus is not necessarily on interacting with the people in front of you, but what's my next picture going to be that I post on Instagram, and how many people are going to like that? And then, there's all the bullying that can take place. There are just social pressures that are on our teenagers today that we never had to deal with and experience. And I think, some of that just gets confounded into some of the issues that, we continue to experience. So it was an interesting podcast episode. I know it opened my eyes. I felt like half of the episodes, I was just like, there's so much that I didn't know. And so, we really initiated those episodes in hopes that some of our parents would be able to engage with that and have some takeaways on how they can have conversations with their students as well.
Thanks. Quick question in the chat. How is teacher availability in Iowa comparing with Minnesota, where collective bargaining has remained intact, i.e. salary and contract language benefits, along with access to legal counsel for teachers if needed? Is it true that teacher graduates are migrating to Minnesota for teaching positions after graduating from Iowa universities?
Great set of questions. I don't feel like I really have specific information about Minnesota. It has always been, in my time in Iowa, an attractive place for some of our graduates to go. Our graduates in Iowa have historically always been recruited by all of our neighboring states. We typically have not fared well on our actual compensation for teachers. That has only become a wider gap over the last 5 to 10 years. I think my last time I looked, like in November or so, I believe we are currently ranked at about the 45th percentile, or the 45th out of our 50 states in terms of our compensation rates for teachers. So I don't know that it's collective bargaining as much as just the overall set of circumstances for individuals that have mobility these days, as we know they all do, to go to where the job is most attractive. But it's certainly an issue. And if someone wants to follow up with me, email me directly. I think I have sources where I could look up some of the other questions specifically. Thank you.
Okay, time is getting, sorry, maybe these guys can stay after a couple minutes to answer a couple questions, or you can email your questions over. On behalf of Rotary, we are the lead sponsor, of Raising Readers. And if you would do us the honor of signing the back of these, and then they will be given to a two-year-old at their well baby check. Yeah, so I'll let you guys sit in your chairs and go ahead. So also you guys can sit down. So in honor of our educational presentation, I thought we could do something fun and auction off the remaining cupcakes for the scholarship fund. Now, I know that some of you are going back to your offices and you would hate to not share these with your office mates, or maybe you guys have an afternoon coffee you need to get to, or maybe there's a morning coffee that you could share these with your friends. So we're starting at $10. Who is going to take this to their office for $10? Hey, come on, guys. Look, she's setting the example. All right, they're good. I think this is red velvet, and there's chocolate over there. You can have your pick of the row. Who else would be interested in taking these to their office, their friends? $10. Nice. Anybody else? Don't embarrass me up here, team. Let's have some takers. And if you don't have cash, Karen will bill you. $20. Well, then you're going to be full. All right. So you get a box for 40. You can have a box for 15. And Sophie, you can have a box for 10. Is that what it was? 15, 20, 40. Hey, there you go. Sold. Oh, okay. You can deliver it to your favorite place. All right, thanks. All right, give it up for our speakers. All right, we will stand for the four-way test. The things we do and say. Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it be friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned?